So you wrote a beautiful Bible study called The Glorious Ordinary, an invitation to study God's word in your everyday life. And you shared this beautiful story on how you found that sweetness in the midst of a really hard season, and also in a season that your expectations were very different. Mm-hmm. And so I would love for you to share that story, and also what your heart, why you wrote the Bible study. I love knowing that.
Okay. Well, that Bible study that you're holding is probably like the third or fourth version. Oh. And so I began writing my journey when we were waiting to bring my daughter home, mm-hmm. and all of that waiting anxiety that I had, and the whole idea of expecting but not having a due date. And that's what adoption is.
Hard. That's hard. And so
you don't know. Yeah. Yep. And so I wrote through that season. I just wrote out my thoughts for myself. And I thought eventually it might become a book. And then when we brought her home, our life just kind of shifted. And her special needs were not what they told us. Mm-hmm. They were way more severe. And then she had other needs that we weren't really expecting. Mm-hmm. And it just threw me. And then she didn't bond with me right away. Mm-hmm. And I didn't bond with her right away. Yeah. And I think I expected her not to bond with me, but I didn't expect the feelings of me not bonding with her, mm-hmm. right away, because I held her in my heart for so many months. Mm-hmm. And I had her picture, but I didn't know her. Yeah. And when I stepped back and realized that, how can I expect even myself to love this little girl the way, that I love my other children when I don't really know her? Yeah. And so it took time for me to get to know her and to fall in love with her. And so, of course, now I am in love with her. I love everything about her, but just that whole being thrust into that special needs world, we knew it was a possibility, but in your heart you hope that everything will be fine, right? And that it's not going to be as bad as they say. Well, it was as bad as they said, and it was much harder. And even to this day, she is completely nonverbal. Wow. And so that has been, a huge challenge. I had to grieve my expectations. Yeah. I had to grieve my dreams. I had to grieve the little girl I thought I was bringing home. Mm-hmm. And it really put just an intense time of just bitterness in my mm-hmm. heart. And I just had to fight it with everything in me. And mm-hmm. one of the things that I did was I just wrote about it, and I cried to the Lord about it. I struggled with anger and frustration, lots and lots of guilt, because I felt like maybe I'm not the right mother for her, or maybe, God made a mistake, or maybe we made a mistake, or maybe, there's just so many maybes. Mm-hmm. And I struggled with loneliness as well. And so I just began to pour myself out to the Lord. And I studied a lot in Psalms, mm-hmm. and I studied a lot of just truths that I knew. And I've known Jesus since I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. I've gone to church, my whole entire life. But this was the first time I had to kind of hold on to truths. Right. When I wasn't really feeling it. I'd always felt a closeness to God. I always, felt like it was, a good relationship. But then I almost felt like he betrayed us. And he didn't, but it felt that way. Right. And I had to leave my feelings behind. And I had to say, okay, what is truth? And the only place I could find truth was his word. And so I began just reading his words and pulling out the truth, and I began living one day at a time. And I wrote about this in my book, that I really didn't like living one day. I love the big picture. I love, being organized and being able to know. But when I thought about the future, I felt very scared. And then when I thought about the past, I felt so much guilt and shame. And so I said, okay, right now, this is where God has me. And at the beginning of last year, when I was writing my book, he gave me Psalm 46. And the very first says that God is our refuge, a very present help. And that word present can mean close, but it also can mean like in a time, like right now,
Yeah.
the present.